There comes a quiet moment when staying still begins to feel heavier than taking a step. Walking is not about speed or fitness at this stage of life. It is about reclaiming movement, presence, and the simple dignity of choosing to keep going, one gentle step at a time. Stillness rarely arrives all at once. It settles gradually, almost politely, into daily life. At first, it feels like a well-earned rest, a pause after decades of motion, responsibility, and effort. There is relief in no longer needing to rush, no longer needing to push the body to meet schedules that once dictated every hour. The days grow quieter, the pace slows, and for a time that feels right. Many people reach later life carrying the memory of years spent moving constantly. Work demanded long hours, families required attention, errands filled weekends. There was always somewhere to go, something to carry, someone waiting. When those demands finally ease, stillness can feel like a reward, a chance to breathe, a chance to stop proving anything. At first, it feels like freedom. Morning routines change subtly. Where once there was urgency, now there is ease. The day no longer begins with a list that must be completed before nightfall. There is time to sit with coffee a little longer, time to read the paper more slowly, time to look out the window and watch the light change. These moments feel gentle, earned, and deserved. Movement begins to shift almost without notice. Short walks that once happened automatically are postponed. The stairs are taken more carefully. Trips outside are planned around convenience. It is not laziness. It is caution mixed with comfort. The body has changed, and listening to it feels wise. There is an understanding that energy is no longer limitless, it must be protected. Gradually, movement becomes something to consider rather than something to assume. Errands are combined to avoid extra steps. Parking closer becomes preferable. Chairs are chosen for comfort rather than proximity. None of these decisions feel significant on their own. Each one makes sense in the moment. Each one is small, practical, and reasonable. Over time, these choices form a pattern. Stillness becomes familiar. It feels safe, predictable. There is comfort in knowing where the body will be and what it will be doing. There is less uncertainty, less risk, less chance of discomfort. The home becomes a central place, a reliable environment where everything is arranged just right. The world outside begins to feel a little farther away. It is not that interest fades, curiosity remains, but participation changes. Observing replaces engaging, watching replaces moving. The body rests more often, and the mind accepts this as part of aging. After all, slowing down is expected. It is even encouraged. There is wisdom in rest. The body needs recovery. Muscles need care. Joints require patience. There is no shame in honoring these realities. Many people learn through hard experience that pushing too far too often leads to pain that lingers. Avoiding strain feels like self-respect. Stillness in this sense feels responsible. What often goes unnoticed is how quietly stillness expands. What begins as intentional rest gradually becomes default behavior. Movement is no longer a natural part of the day. It becomes an optional activity, something to be done if there is a reason, if there is enough energy, if the weather is right, if everything else feels aligned. Without realizing it, the body is no longer invited into the day as often. This shift does not announce itself. There is no moment where one can say, "This is when I stopped moving." It happens between days, between choices, between seasons. One year blends into the next, and the pattern solidifies. Stillness becomes normal. The body adapts quickly. Muscles soften. Balance adjusts. Movements become more deliberate. None of this feels alarming. It feels natural, even expected, The body is simply responding to how it is being used. At the same time, confidence changes subtly. There is a growing awareness of limits. Certain movements are approached more carefully. Uneven ground feels less inviting. Long distances feel unnecessary. The idea of walking just because begins to feel impractical, even indulgent. Why move without a purpose? This question often arises quietly. Walking to get somewhere still makes sense. Walking for exercise, however, feels less compelling. Exercise implies effort, and effort feels less appealing when the body already asks for kindness. There is a sense that movement must justify itself. Without that justification, stillness wins. Many people begin to associate movement with discomfort, not because it always hurts, but because it might. There is uncertainty, a concern that something could go wrong, a stumble, a strain, a soreness that lasts longer than it used to. Caution becomes a guiding principle. This caution is not fear-based. It is experience-based. The body has taught lessons over the years. Recovery takes longer. Injuries linger. It makes sense to protect what remains strong by not testing it unnecessarily. Stillness feels like protection. At the same time, there is an emotional layer to this shift. The world has changed. Public spaces feel busier. Sidewalks feel faster. People move quickly, often without looking. Keeping up feels unnecessary and unappealing. Remaining within familiar spaces feels calmer. Home becomes a sanctuary. Inside the home, everything is predictable. The floor is even. The furniture is placed intentionally. There are no surprises. The body relaxes in these spaces. Movement is minimal, but comfort is high. Over time, comfort begins to outweigh curiosity. There is also a subtle social component. Walking alone can feel different than it once did. Companions may no longer be available. Schedules no longer align. Going out alone feels less motivating. Without a shared reason, movement feels less meaningful. Stillness fills the gap. Days pass quietly, weeks settle into routine. Life does not feel empty. It feels calm, familiar. There is satisfaction in having done enough in earlier years to earn this quieter pace. And yet, beneath that calm, something else is happening. The body notices. It notices not through pain or alarm, but through subtle signals. A stiffness upon standing, a hesitation before stepping outside, a sense that the body needs a moment to catch up after sitting too long. These sensations are often dismissed as age-related, and perhaps they are, but they are also messages that movement is becoming less common. The mind notices too. There is a slight dulling of energy, a sense that days blur together more easily. Without movement to mark transitions, time feels less defined. Morning blends into afternoon. Afternoon drifts into evening. Stillness stretches time in one way and compresses it in another. There is no crisis here, no urgent problem, just a gradual narrowing of experience. The range of movement shrinks, and with it, the range of sensation. The body feels less varied. The day feels more contained. This containment feels safe. But safety and vitality are not the same thing. Many seniors reach this stage without concern. They feel content. They feel settled. They feel that they have earned the right to rest. And they have. Rest is essential. Stillness has its place. The question is not whether stillness is wrong. The question is whether it has quietly replaced movement altogether. When movement fades from daily life, it does not announce its absence. It simply stops being expected. The body no longer anticipates it. The mind no longer plans for it. The day no longer includes it naturally. Stillness becomes the background. At first, this feels peaceful. Over time, it can feel limiting. Not dramatically, not painfully, just quietly. There is a difference between choosing stillness and drifting into it. Choosing implies awareness. Drifting happens without it. Many people find themselves here without having made a conscious decision. Life simply shifted. Circumstances changed. Habits adjusted. The result feels natural, but it was never examined. This chapter of life often carries an unspoken assumption that slowing down means staying still. That assumption deserves gentle attention. Stillness has value. It offers rest, reflection, and calm. But when it becomes the default, it can quietly shape the body and mind in ways that go unnoticed until much later. This is where the story truly begins. Not with walking, but with recognizing how easily movement can fade when stillness feels safe. Not with effort, but with awareness, with noticing the space where movement once lived and asking, softly, whether it still belongs there. The next step does not require action yet, only noticing. And noticing, as it turns out, is often the most important beginning of all. The first step rarely feels physical at the beginning. It feels emotional. Even when the body is capable of movement, there is often a pause that comes before it, a hesitation that lives in the mind long before it reaches the feet. This hesitation is quiet, reasonable, and deeply human. It is shaped by memory, experience, and an instinct to protect what has already carried us this far. After stillness becomes familiar, movement begins to feel optional. And when something feels optional, it must justify itself. The question is no longer, can I walk? But why should I? That question carries weight. For many seniors, walking has become associated with purpose. Walking to the store, walking to an appointment, walking because there is somewhere to be. Walking for its own sake, without destination or obligation, can feel unnecessary, even strange. There is a sense that effort should be reserved for what truly matters. This belief does not come from weakness. It comes from wisdom refined by years of living. Life has taught restraint. It has taught the value of conserving energy. It has taught that not every impulse must be followed, and not every action is worth the cost. When the body changes, these lessons feel especially important. So when the idea of walking arises, it is often met with questions rather than enthusiasm. What if it hurts? What if I feel unsteady? What if I need to stop and there is nowhere to sit? What if I look slow, awkward, or out of place? These concerns are rarely spoken aloud, but they are present. They shape behavior quietly, nudging people back toward the safety of stillness. The mind imagines small discomforts becoming larger problems, a stiff knee turning into lingering pain, a short walk turning into exhaustion. The body remembers past aches vividly. Even minor discomforts can feel magnified when recovery takes longer than it once did. There is a memory of times when soreness lasted days instead of hours, when a simple strain interrupted routines and demanded attention. Caution feels responsible. There is also the weight of comparison. Public spaces are filled with people moving quickly, confidently, often without awareness of those around them. Keeping pace no longer feels natural or necessary. The idea of stepping into that flow can feel intimidating. Walking, once a simple act, now carries emotional context. It is no longer just movement. It becomes a statement about ability, about age, about visibility. Some seniors find themselves reluctant to be seen in motion, especially if that motion does not match how they once moved. There is dignity in not wanting to feel exposed. This hesitation is not rooted in vanity. It is rooted in identity. The body holds memories of strength, speed, and endurance. Comparing present movement to past capability can feel discouraging. Avoiding the comparison altogether feels easier, so the idea of walking stays in the background. Even when a small voice suggests it might help, that voice is often met with resistance. Not anger, not denial, just delay. Tomorrow, perhaps, when the weather is better, when there is more energy, when there is a reason. Reasons are easy to postpone. Another belief quietly reinforces the hesitation, the idea that movement must be impressive to matter, that if it is not long, fast, or structured, it is not worth doing. This belief often comes from years of seeing exercise framed as achievement measured, tracked, compared. If walking cannot meet those standards, why bother? This way of thinking places unnecessary pressure on the act of movement. It turns walking into a performance rather than a presence, and performance carries risk. The risk of falling short, of feeling inadequate, of confirming fears about decline. Avoiding that risk feels protective. There is also the matter of self-talk. Over time, people learn narratives about themselves. I've never been a walker. I'm not built for that anymore. My body doesn't like it. These statements feel factual because they have been repeated internally for years. Challenging them feels uncomfortable. Starting to walk again can feel like questioning one's own story. And stories, especially those built over decades, carry authority. Letting them go even gently can feel destabilizing. So hesitation persists. What often goes unnoticed is that the hardest part of walking is rarely the walking itself. It is the moment before the moment when intention must turn into action, when the mind must allow the body to try. This moment is quiet but powerful. It is filled with memories of effort, discomfort, and vulnerability. It carries the weight of aging, not as a medical condition, but as an emotional reality. The body feels more precious now, less replaceable. Protecting it feels like responsibility. And yet, beneath that caution, there is often something else. A quiet longing. A memory of how it felt to move without thinking, to feel the rhythm of steps, to let the body lead for a while instead of the mind. This memory may not be sharp, but it is present. It surfaces occasionally, especially on days when the air feels inviting or when the light falls just right. That longing is not for exercise. It is for engagement. It is for the feeling of being part of the world rather than watching it from a distance. It is for the subtle energy that comes from motion, the way thoughts loosen, the way breath deepens, the way time feels different when the body is involved. Still, longing alone is rarely enough. The hesitation must soften before the step can happen. This softening does not come from force. It comes from reframing, from allowing walking to be something other than what it has been imagined to be. Not exercise, not obligation, not proof, simply movement. When walking is released from expectations, it becomes less threatening. A few steps become enough. A short distance becomes valid. The idea of walking without a goal begins to feel possible, but this shift takes time. For many seniors, the first step is not taken on a sidewalk or a path. It is taken internally. It is the decision to stop dismissing the idea outright, to let the possibility exist without immediately shutting it down. This internal step is subtle but significant. It might look like standing up and stretching near a window, or stepping outside briefly without a plan, or walking to the end of the driveway instead of driving. These actions may not even register as walking at first, but they matter. They begin to change the relationship with movement. They turn it from a distant concept into a nearby option. They allow the body to participate without pressure. What often surprises people is how quickly the body responds when given permission, not with strength or speed, but with familiarity. Muscles remember patterns. Balance recalls rhythms. Breath adjusts naturally. The body has not forgotten how to walk. It has simply been waiting. The fear that something will go wrong often proves quieter than expected. Discomfort may appear, but it is usually manageable. The body speaks, and when listened to, it rarely demands extremes. It asks for pacing, for attention, for respect. Walking, when approached gently, offers all three. The hardest step remains the first one, not because it is physically demanding, but because it asks for trust. Trust in the body's ability to respond. Trust in one's own judgment. Trust that effort does not have to be impressive to be meaningful. This trust grows slowly. Once the first step is taken, even tentatively, something shifts. The idea of walking changes shape. It becomes less about proving anything and more about experiencing something. But that shift belongs to what comes next. For now, it is enough to understand this. Hesitation is not failure. It is part of the process. It reflects care, history, and a desire to protect what matters. The first step is not about overcoming fear. It is about allowing curiosity to stand beside it, and sometimes that is enough to move forward. Walking changes when it is no longer treated as a task. When the first steps are taken gently, without expectation, something subtle begins to happen. The body stops feeling like something to manage and starts feeling like something to listen to. Movement becomes less about getting somewhere and more about noticing what is already there. At first, the awareness is simple. The sound of shoes against the ground, the rhythm of breath, the slight sway of arms moving naturally at the sides. These sensations do not demand effort. They arrive on their own, once the body is allowed to move without pressure. For many seniors, this awareness feels unfamiliar at first. Life has spent years asking the mind to lead planning, deciding, managing. The body followed instructions. Now, as walking resumes, the body begins to speak again in quieter ways. Balance announces itself gently. Each step carries a subtle negotiation between stability and motion. The body adjusts without conscious thought, making small corrections, rediscovering patterns it has known for a lifetime. There is reassurance in this. The fear that the body has forgotten how to move often fades quickly. Muscles remember. Joints respond. The movement may be slower than it once was, but it is still coordinated, still capable, still intelligent. Walking becomes a conversation rather than a command. The breath joins this conversation naturally. It deepens without instruction. The body finds a rhythm that feels sustainable, not rushed, not strained, just steady. This rhythm becomes a guide, setting a pace that respects both energy and comfort. Many people are surprised by how calming this feels. When movement is no longer forced, the nervous system softens. Thoughts that once felt crowded begin to spread out. The mind becomes less insistent, less busy. There is space to notice surroundings without needing to interpret or evaluate them. A tree passed 1,000 times looks slightly different. The way light falls on the sidewalk changes from moment to moment. Sounds emerge. Birds, distant traffic, wind through leaves. These details were always present, but stillness had kept them at a distance. Walking brings them closer. This closeness does not require focus or effort. It happens because the body is engaged. When the body moves, attention naturally follows. It becomes grounded rather than scattered. For seniors who have spent years feeling slightly disconnected from their bodies, this reconnection can feel deeply reassuring. The body is no longer an object of concern. It becomes a partner again. This partnership builds trust. As trust grows, tension eases, shoulders relax, jaw unclenches. The posture shifts subtly, becoming more upright without effort. These changes are not corrections, they are responses. The body knows how to move toward balance when given the chance. Walking also reveals limits, but in a gentle way. a slight fatigue, a need to slow down, a desire to pause. These signals are not failures. They are information. When honored, they deepen the conversation rather than interrupt it. Stopping becomes part of walking, not a sign that something has gone wrong. This is where walking differs from exercise. Exercise often pushes past signals. Walking listens to them. It allows the body to set the terms. Over time, this listening becomes intuitive. There is less checking in the mirror of comparison, less wondering whether the walk is enough. The body begins to recognize its own needs without judgment. Some days call for more movement. Some days call for less. Both are valid. This flexibility is especially important in later life. The body changes from day to day now. Energy fluctuates. Sleep patterns shift. Weather affects joints and mood. Walking adapts to all of this naturally when it is approached as a conversation rather than a goal. The mind benefits from this approach as well. When walking is not about achievement, there is no pressure to perform. Thoughts are free to drift, settle, or simply be. Memories may surface. Ideas may appear and fade. There is no need to hold on to them. This mental ease is often unexpected. Many seniors carry a quiet tension around thinking, worrying about memory, about clarity, about staying sharp. Walking offers a space where thinking does not need to be productive. It can simply exist. In this space, the mind often feels clearer precisely because it is not being forced. The connection between movement and clarity becomes apparent, not as a scientific explanation, but as an experience. After walking, even briefly, there is often a sense of steadiness, not excitement, not stimulation, just calm presence. This presence becomes familiar. Walking turns into a reliable way to check in with oneself, not to assess or judge, but to notice. How does the body feel today? How does the mind respond? These questions are answered without words, through sensation. Over time, this dialogue deepens. The body begins to anticipate movement again. There is a subtle readiness that appears at certain times of day, a sense that walking belongs, that it fits naturally into the rhythm of life. This belonging is important. When walking is experienced as listening rather than effort, it no longer feels like an interruption to the day. It becomes part of the day's texture, as ordinary and necessary as rest. The fear that movement would disrupt comfort begins to fade. Comfort is redefined. It is no longer just the absence of strain. It is the presence of connection, the feeling that the body and mind are working together rather than separately. This redefinition changes how walking is perceived. It is no longer something added to life. It is something that reveals life more clearly. It brings attention back to the present moment without demanding discipline or structure. This is especially meaningful in later years, when the future feels less pressing and the present feels more precious. Walking offers a way to inhabit the present fully, through sensation rather than thought. Each step anchors awareness. Each breath reinforces rhythm. The conversation continues, quietly, step by step, and as it does, something important becomes clear. The body does not need to be pushed to move. It needs to be invited. When movement is invited with patience and respect, the body responds with trust. And trust, once restored, opens the door to changes that go far beyond walking. Those changes unfold gradually over time, as walking becomes less of an event and more of a companion. That is what begins to happen next. When walking becomes part of the day rather than an interruption to it, the changes arrive quietly. There is no moment when everything suddenly feels different, no dramatic improvement, no clear line dividing before and after. Instead, there is a gradual sense of easing, like a room filling with light so slowly that it takes time to notice it is brighter. At first, the body responds in small ways. Standing up feels steadier. The hesitation before moving lessens. Steps feel more familiar, less negotiated. The body begins to anticipate motion rather than brace against it. These changes are subtle, but they accumulate. Confidence grows without being announced. It shows up in the way one moves through space, in the willingness to take a slightly longer route, in the absence of constant checking, am I okay? Am I tired? Should I stop? The body answers these questions more clearly now, reducing the need to ask them so often. Walking no longer feels like something to prepare for. It fits naturally between other moments. A short walk in the morning, a few minutes outside in the afternoon, an unplanned loop before dinner. These moments are not scheduled or measured. They simply happen, guided by familiarity rather than intention. This familiarity brings reassurance. There is comfort in knowing that movement is available, that it no longer requires negotiation. The body has relearned how to participate without protest. It has found a rhythm that feels sustainable, one that respects energy rather than draining it. As this rhythm settles, the mind begins to change as well. Thoughts feel less crowded. There is a quiet clarity that lingers after walking, even brief walking. The mental noise that often accompanies stillness begins to soften. The mind feels less stuck in itself. Walking seems to create space. This space is not empty. It is calm. It allows thoughts to come and go without attachment. Worries lose some of their urgency. Reflections feel lighter, less burdened. Many seniors notice that decisions feel easier during this stage, not because walking provides answers, but because it steadies the inner environment in which decisions are made. When the body feels engaged and balanced, the mind follows. This balance affects mood in gentle ways. There is a subtle lift in spirits, not excitement, but steadiness. Days feel more distinct. Morning feels like morning. Evening feels like evening. Time regains texture. Walking helps mark the passage of the day. Without it, hours can blend together. With it, there are natural transitions, a beginning, a middle, an end. These transitions provide structure without rigidity. This structure feels supportive rather than confining. As walking becomes routine, there is also a shift in self-deception. The body is no longer seen primarily as something fragile that must be protected from use. It becomes something capable, something responsive. This does not mean ignoring limitations. Limitations are still present, but they are no longer the defining feature. They are part of a larger picture that includes strength, adaptability, and resilience. Showing up consistently, even in small ways, reinforces this picture. Each walk becomes a quiet affirmation. I am still here. I am still participating. I am still capable of movement. These affirmations are not spoken aloud. They are felt. They build a sense of trust that extends beyond walking itself. Trust in one's ability to care for the body. Trust in one's judgment about pacing and rest. Trust in the capacity to adapt. This trust has a calming effect. Anxiety around movement diminishes. Fear of discomfort loses its grip. The body has demonstrated that it can move without harm when listened to. This experience reshapes expectations. Walking is no longer associated with risk. It becomes associated with reassurance, a way to check in, to ground oneself, to return to balance. Over time, this reassurance influences other areas of life. People find themselves more willing to engage, to step outside, to participate in small activities that once felt taxing. The boundaries of the day expand slightly, not dramatically, just enough. This expansion feels empowering. It is not about reclaiming youth or chasing vitality. It is about maintaining agency. The sense that one's actions still matter, that choices still shape experience. Walking reinforces this sense gently. There is also a growing appreciation for consistency. In a world that often emphasizes change, consistency can feel undervalued. But in later life, consistency becomes a source of strength. Showing up regularly, even in small ways, builds stability. Walking offers this stability without demanding attention. It becomes part of the background rhythm of life, like breathing or eating. Its benefits emerge precisely because it is not treated as special. As walking settles into routine, the relationship with the body continues to evolve. The body feels less like a project and more like a companion. Its signals are familiar. Its needs are understood. There is less frustration, less impatience. This ease carries into rest as well. Rest feels more satisfying when it follows movement. Sitting feels earned rather than default. Stillness regains its value because it is balanced by motion. The contrast matters. Without walking, rest can feel stagnant. With walking, rest feels restorative. The two support each other. This balance shapes how seniors experience their days. There is less sense of being trapped in one mode, either always resting or always pushing. The day flows between movement and stillness naturally. This flow brings peace. As walking becomes routine, its benefits no longer feel like benefits. They feel like normalcy, like a return to something that had been missing without being noticed. The body feels more integrated into daily life. The mind feels less separate. This integration is perhaps the most meaningful change of all. It restores a sense of wholeness that can quietly erode when stillness becomes the default. Walking, in its simplicity, stitches together body and mind again. The changes continue to deepen over time, not by adding more walking, but by allowing walking to remain present. The habit sustains itself because it fits, because it does not ask for more than the body can give. This is how walking becomes more than an activity. It becomes a reliable presence, a steady companion, a way of maintaining connection to oneself without effort or expectation. And from this place of steadiness, something else begins to shift. Walking starts to feel less like something one does and more like a way of being. That shift opens the door to a deeper understanding, one that moves beyond walking itself into how movement connects us to the world around us. That understanding belongs to what comes next. Walking begins to change meaning when it is no longer framed as something done for the body alone. At a certain point, it becomes clear that walking is not simply movement, and it is not exercise in the narrow sense. It is presence. It is a way of entering the world gently, without needing to accomplish anything or arrive anywhere in particular. For many seniors, this realization arrives quietly. Walking no longer carries the pressure of improvement. There is no focus on distance, pace, or progress. Those measures fade into the background, replaced by something softer and more sustaining. Walking becomes a way to feel connected to the ground beneath the feet, to the air moving across the skin, to the passing moments that make up a day. This shift changes everything. When walking is understood as presence, it no longer competes with rest or comfort. It complements them. It becomes something that enriches the day rather than interrupting it. The body moves, yes, but so does attention. The world opens slightly. Simple details begin to register again. The sound of leaves moving overhead, the rhythm of footsteps echoing lightly on pavement, the quiet pattern of houses passed, familiar yet newly noticed. These observations are not analyzed or stored. They are simply experienced. Walking brings the mind back into the moment without effort. This quality is especially meaningful in later life, when much of the mind's energy is spent either remembering the past or anticipating the future. Walking offers a gentle anchor in the present. Each step brings attention back to what is happening now. This presence has a calming effect. It reduces the mental wandering that can accompany long periods of stillness. It interrupts loops of worry or rumination without force. The body's movement provides a steady rhythm that the mind naturally follows. There is relief in this. Many seniors find that walking becomes one of the few times when thinking feels less demanding. Thoughts come and go without needing to be resolved. There is no pressure to plan, decide, or solve. The mind rests by moving. This rest is different from stillness. Stillness can sometimes allow thoughts to gather and grow heavy. Walking disperses them gently. It gives them space to move through rather than settle. In this way, walking becomes a form of quiet companionship. It accompanies reflection without amplifying it. It allows memories to surface and pass without clinging. A song remembered, a face recalled, a moment from long ago revisited briefly. These memories arise naturally, carried by movement rather than summoned by effort. Walking holds them lightly. There is also a sense of rejoining the world. When stillness dominates, it is easy to feel slightly removed from people, from places, from the flow of life. Walking restores a sense of participation. Being outside, even briefly, places the body back into shared space. This shared space does not demand interaction. It simply invites presence, passing others on a path, hearing distant voices, seeing movement beyond one's own. These experiences remind the walker that life continues around them and that they are still part of it. This sense of belonging is subtle but powerful. It counters the quiet isolation that can grow when days are spent largely indoors. Even a short walk can restore a feeling of connection that is difficult to name but deeply felt. Walking also restores agency. Agency is not about control or dominance. It is about choice. The choice to step outside, the choice to move forward, the choice to turn back when ready. These choices reinforce a sense of self-direction that can feel diminished as roles change with age. Each walk becomes a small act of self-authorship, not dramatic, not defiant, simply affirming there is dignity in choosing to move through the world at one's own pace, on one's own terms. Walking allows that pace to be slow without being passive. It allows movement without urgency. This balance feels especially right in later years. Walking as presence also changes how time is experienced. Instead of hours passing unnoticed, time becomes textured. A walk creates a beginning and an end. It gives shape to the day. It creates a memory, however small, that distinguishes one day from the next. These distinctions matter. They help prevent the days from blending together. They give the mind something to hold on to, a sense that today contains something lived, not just something endured. Over time, walking becomes a quiet marker of days well inhabited. It does not need to be long. It does not need to be daily. It simply needs to be chosen when possible. The relationship with walking becomes flexible. Some days the walk is brief and slow. Some days it is longer and more confident. Some days it does not happen at all. None of these variations carry judgment. Walking remains available without obligation. This availability is what makes it sustainable, because walking is not tied to success or failure. It remains inviting. It does not become another task to manage or another standard to meet. It stays gentle, and in that gentleness it continues to offer its quiet gifts: presence, connection, agency, rhythm. Walking, once reduced to exercise or necessity, reveals itself as something far more generous. It becomes a way of staying in conversation with life itself, not by striving, but by showing up. As this understanding settles, walking becomes woven into the fabric of daily living. It no longer stands apart, it belongs. and when something belongs, it tends to stay. The final chapter of this journey is not about adding more steps or maintaining a streak. It is about carrying this relationship forward with kindness toward the body, toward the day, and toward oneself. That is where walking finds its lasting place. What allows walking to remain part of life is not discipline. It is kindness. As time goes on, many habits fall away not because they are unhelpful, but because they are held too tightly. Expectations creep in. Comparisons begin. What once felt gentle starts to feel demanding. Walking, if treated that way, can quietly lose the qualities that made it meaningful in the first place. Carrying it forward requires a different approach. Kindness begins with permission. Permission to walk slowly. Permission to walk briefly. Permission to turn back sooner than planned. Permission to skip a day without guilt. These permissions protect the relationship with movement rather than testing it. In later life, consistency does not come from pressure. It comes from trust. Trust that the body knows when it needs movement and when it needs rest. Trust that missing a walk does not undo the value of previous ones. Trust that walking is not something that must be defended or justified. This trust allows walking to remain available rather than burdensome. There is an important shift that happens when kindness replaces expectation. Walking stops being something one must keep up with and becomes something one returns to naturally. Like a familiar path, it waits without judgment. This waiting matters. Life in later years carries unpredictability. Energy fluctuates. Sleep changes. Appointments interrupt routines. Weather influences mood and movement. Walking that survives these fluctuations must be flexible. Kindness provides that flexibility. On days when the body feels heavy, walking may look like standing near a window and taking a few steps. On days when energy is higher, it may extend farther. Both experiences count. Both maintain connection. This approach honors reality. It acknowledges that the body is not static. It changes not just year to year, but day to day. Responding with kindness allows walking to adapt alongside those changes rather than resist them. There is dignity in adapting. Too often, aging is framed as a series of losses to be fought or denied. Kindness offers a different perspective. It treats change as information rather than failure. It allows the body to be where it is without shame. Walking carried forward with kindness reflects self-respect. Self-respect in later life is not loud. It does not demand recognition. It shows itself in how one listens inwardly, in how choices are made quietly, without apology. Walking becomes one of those choices, not because it is virtuous, not because it is expected, but because it feels right. This feeling may change over time. What feels right at 70 may feel different at 80. Kindness allows walking to evolve without being abandoned. There is also an emotional dimension to carrying walking forward. As years pass, people often become more aware of limitations. This awareness can lead to caution, and caution can slide into avoidance if not balanced with compassion. Walking approached with kindness helps maintain that balance. It allows engagement without denial. One does not need to pretend the body is younger than it is. Walking does not ask for that. It simply asks for presence. Presence with what is possible today. This presence brings a sense of peace. Peace does not come from doing more. It comes from doing what aligns with one's current life. Walking, when held kindly, aligns movement with acceptance. There is no internal argument. The body is not pushed. The mind is not scolded. The walk unfolds naturally, shaped by the day rather than imposed upon it. This harmony is rare and valuable. It changes how walking feels emotionally. It becomes soothing rather than demanding, supportive rather than evaluative. Many seniors notice that when walking is held this way, It becomes something they look forward to, not because it promises improvement, but because it offers familiarity, a reliable moment of connection. This familiarity deepens over time. Walking becomes a quiet companion through changing seasons. It adapts as daylight shortens or lengthens. It adjusts to weather. It shifts with energy. Through it all, it remains present. That presence is enough. There is also wisdom in recognizing when walking needs to pause. Kindness includes knowing when not to walk, when rest is the more respectful choice, when the body asks for stillness rather than movement. Honoring these moments preserves trust, because when the body feels heard, it is more willing to engage later. This reciprocity strengthens the relationship. Walking carried forward with kindness becomes sustainable because it is not extracted from life. It is woven into it gently, without force. This weaving shapes identity subtly. One no longer thinks, I should walk. Instead, the thought becomes, this is something I do when it fits. Walking becomes part of how one cares for oneself, rather than a task to complete. That shift matters. It preserves walking as a lifelong companion rather than a short-lived effort. It ensures that movement remains available even as circumstances change. In the end, the value of walking is not measured in steps or distance. It is measured in relationship with the body, with the day, with one's own presence in the world. When walking is carried forward with kindness, it continues to offer its quiet gifts without asking for anything in return. It reminds us that movement does not have to be impressive to be meaningful, that presence does not require perfection. That dignity is found not in how far we go, but in how gently we choose to keep going, one step at a time. And when even that feels like too much, kindness allows us to pause without losing our way. Walking, in this sense, becomes less about motion and more about living with care. That care, once learned, extends beyond walking. It shapes how one meets each day, how one listens, how one moves forward, not hurried, not forced, but present. And that presence, carried quietly through the later chapters of life, is perhaps the most enduring gift of all.